Everyone loves to say family is everything.
Blood is thicker than water.
You don't turn your back on your own people.
Funny how these phrases are always repeated by the ones who've never had to survive their own home.
Because here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to admit.
People don't cut off their family because they're cold.
They cut them off because staying connected was slowly killing them.
But that explanation is too neat.
Too kind.
So let's look deeper. Let's look at what's actually happening inside the mind of someone who makes one of the most taboo decisions in society, walking away from blood.
From the outside,
It looks dramatic, cruel, even.
How could they do that to their own family?
that question alone reveals the first psychological trap.
We're taught that family is permanent, unconditional,
and untouchable. So when someone breaks that role,
The mind panics.
If family isn't safe,
what is?
What most people never see is that cutting off family is rarely a single moment.
it's not a fight.
Not an argument. Not a slammed door. It's thousands of tiny betrayals stacked so neatly on top of each other that eventually the weight becomes unbearable. It's explaining your pain calmly.
Only to be told you're too sensitive.
It's setting boundaries and watching them get laughed at.
It's realizing that every visit leaves you more exhausted than the last.
And here's where it gets dark.
The brain doesn't cut people off easily, especially not caregivers, especially not people who shaped your earliest sense of reality.
The human nervous system is wired to stay attached, even when attachment hurts.
So by the time someone walks away,
They've already tried everything else.
silence,
Patience. Excuses.
Self-blame.
lots of self-blame.
People who cut off their family often spend years convincing themselves that they're the problem.
That if they were more grateful, more patient, less dramatic, less emotional, things would magically improve. This is the cruel irony. The most empathetic people are usually the ones who stay the longest in unhealthy family systems.
So what finally snaps?
Not anger, clarity. At some point, the mind makes a quiet calculation. It notices patterns.
It realizes apologies never lead to change.
It notices that love always comes with conditions.
That support only exists when you're obedient.
Useful, or silent. And that's when the most dangerous thought appears. If this weren't my family, I would have walked away years ago. That thought changes everything. Because once the brain reframes the relationship as harmful instead of sacred, guilt starts to lose its grip. Not completely. Guilt never fully leaves. It just gets overpowered by something stronger.
Self-preservation.
Here's another truth people don't like hearing.
Some family relationships don't grow.
They feed,
They drain.
they survive on control, obligation, and emotional debt. And the person who cuts off their family is often the one who stopped playing their assigned role. The peacemaker, the emotional punching bag, the achiever, the one who keeps everyone stable while slowly falling apart. When that role collapses, the system panics. Suddenly, you're selfish, ungrateful, brainwashed, influenced by the internet, therapy, friends, anyone except the obvious source of the problem. This reaction isn't confusion, it's loss of control. Because when one person leaves, it exposes what the rest have been ignoring. Now let's talk about the part no one warns you about. Cutting off family doesn't instantly feel empowering. At first, it feels terrifying. Your body doesn't celebrate freedom. It mourns familiarity. Even toxic familiarity. There's a strange grief that comes with choosing yourself. Because you're not just losing people, you're losing the fantasy of who they could have been. And yes,
There are nights when the doubt creeps in, when the mind replays old memories and asks, was it really that bad?
That's not weakness. That's conditioning. The brain is trying to return to what it knows, not what's healthy. But then something subtle happens. The nervous system starts to relax. Mornings feel lighter. Your thoughts aren't constantly rehearsing arguments that never lead anywhere. You stop bracing for criticism that hasn't even happened yet. The silence that once felt empty starts to feel peaceful. That's when people say something shocking. I finally feel free.
And that statement makes others uncomfortable,
Because it suggests a forbidden possibility that loyalty isn't always virtuous. And distance can be an act of self-respect. Here's the sarcastic part no one likes to hear. If family is supposed to be about love, safety, and support, then why is it so controversial to leave when none of those exist? Somehow, walking away from strangers who harm you is called healthy. Walking away from family who do the same is called heartless. Interesting logic. People who cut off their family are often painted as extreme. But psychologically, they're usually the ones who stopped normalizing pain. They questioned patterns instead of traditions. They chose long-term mental health over short-term approval.
and yes,
They accepted being misunderstood, because being understood was never guaranteed anywhere. This doesn't mean every family is toxic. And it doesn't mean cutting off family is always the answer. But it does mean that the decision is rarely impulsive. And almost never easy. It's a last resort made by people who tried to love without destroying themselves. So the next time you hear about someone who abandoned their family, pause before judging. Ask yourself what kind of strength it takes to walk away from the very people you were taught you could never live without. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do isn't holding on. It's letting go. Quietly, painfully,
and without applause.
and the darkest truth of all? The people who judge them the loudest are often the ones afraid of realizing they're allowed to leave too. Sometimes walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival.
Not everyone who leaves is heartless. Some are finally honest with themselves.
Distance doesn't mean hate, it means the pain stopped being negotiable. And for some, letting go is the first real act of self-respect.